Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Of Dreams, Clouds, and Mikans by FoxChica19. A collection of cute one-shot exchanges between Luffy and Nami aboard the Thousand Sunny. Huge shout-out to all the warlords of this channel. You know who you are. Want to stand among legends? Join the channel membership and show your support. Adios.
Of rescue, I sat on the ledge, holding my ankle. It didn't matter how I came to be like that alone in the middle of the forest, all that mattered is that I regretted it. Well, sort of. I had found what I had been looking for, a great spot to view the sunrise. But the sunrise had come and gone, losing all reason for me to be there. And had it not been for falling off a cliff a few meters above me, I'd be long gone as well. But instead I had fallen off a cliff, and I had twisted my ankle, not to mention scraped my leg on the way down. Not one of my nakama knew where I was. I hadn't told anyone, hoping to sneak away with Luffy after finding a good place to watch the sunrise. Well, I had found the place, but Luffy was absent. Falling off a cliff kind of made me unable to fetch him before the break of dawn. I wonder if he'd find me here. I looked up at the cliff above me, seeing my klima tacked hanging a bit over the edge. I probably could have used that about then. It wasn't that I was just lost, I knew exactly where I was, but I was deep in the forest. The chances of them finding me were slim. So I stared out across the treetops, waiting. There was nothing else I could do. The sun beat down on me. It was hot, almost to the point of being unbearable, especially when there was no shade. I wish I had a hat. Luffy's would have been nice about then. My ankle throbbed. I wished Chopper was there, but more than that, I wished Luffy was there. "Nami's still missing?" Robin asked, coming up behind me as I sat on the railing beside the figurehead. I stared at the town, waiting for her to come back. There was a part of me that wanted to run out there and find her instead of waiting, especially since when I had woken up early today, a piercing pain being the reason she hadn't been around. How early had she left? Had she been kidnapped? Was there anything special about today? I couldn't think of anything. My stomach growled loudly, but I ignored it. Sanji said lunch was almost done. "I'm not hungry." My stomach rumbled again. "You're an awful liar, Luffy," Robin chuckled. "I'll bring you out something." "Thank you." I remember her bringing me out a plate, but when I looked down later it was already gone. But my hands were greasy. My stomach rumbled again, just more quietly this time. I wiped my hands on my shorts and got down from the railing. "Is she coming?" Chopper asked, looking up at me as I passed by. "No, I still haven't seen her," I murmured, going to the edge of the ship. I leapt over it and landed on the dock. "I'll be back in a while." "Be careful," Chopper shouted after me. She, I'm always careful." I gave him a quick wave before turning and running into the town. I looked around. There weren't any people with her lovely orange hair, so she should have been easy to spot. She wasn't anywhere to be seen. I spotted Sanji, but the way he was wilted made it seem like he hadn't seen her either. I kept moving. He didn't even notice me as I went by. My eyes scanned the crowd. I took a breath, not sure of where to look. I had looked high and low over the town for hours. I even climbed to the top of the tallest building, no sign of her. My stomach was growling again. It felt really hot. I looked up at the sun, which was slowly approaching sunset. The meat from the shop I passed smelled delicious, but Nami wasn't there to pay. Not that I was looking for her just so that she could buy meat for me, and that I didn't have money. I did. It just probably wouldn't be enough. I felt lonely, and my ankle still throbbed slightly from this morning despite not having done anything to injure it. I frowned, scratching my head as I thought of places she might have disappeared to. She wouldn't go to another town to shop without telling us first. She had no reason to go into the forest, but that's where I wanted to search for her. I looked back at the ship as I went into a store, buying a small barrel of water. I glanced at the ship once more as I exited. And then I took off. I was thirsty, really thirsty. I closed my eyes, wiping the sweat from my forehead. I rested my head against the rocky wall. The pain in my ankle felt like nothing, being this exhausted and overheated. I used my arm to give me a bit of shade, but it didn't help much. I glanced at the sun. It wasn't going down quick enough. Moving my tongue around my mouth made me realize just how dry my mouth was. I opened my mouth, taking deep breaths, but the hot air didn't help. I really could have used my Klimatak at that moment. Or Luffy's hat. Or Luffy in general. I wondered if I'd get a tan from this. I took a small sip of the water, looking through the trees off into the distance. The sun was to my right, slowly sinking lower as I walked. That made it the west, east. No, I couldn't remember. Nami would know. Where was she? As I went around a tree, I spotted a familiar blue object on the ground. As I rushed forward, I realized it was a cliff. I looked around. Nami. I picked up her Klimatak. She had to be near. She never traveled far without it. I stuck it in my pocket and took a glance over the cliff's edge, curious to how far it was to the bottom. But instead my eyes fell upon her there, leaning against the rocky cliff, her eyes closed. Without any hesitation, I jumped down to her. "Nami?" I asked, shaking her shoulder gently. Her eyelashes fluttered, but didn't open. I looked over at the sun, feeling its heat radiating down on us. I felt Nami's cheek. She was warm. I took a long drink of water, then pressed my lips to hers, letting the water slip from my mouth to hers. She coughed, taken by surprise. "Luffy?" She looked at me, rubbing her head with her hand. "What are you doing down here?" I asked, looking around. Her voice trailed off, reaching for the water, and frowned. Oh, yeah, I was searching for a beautiful place to watch the sunrise with you." "It's sunset," I told her as she took a long, long sip. Then she dumped half the contents over her head. Her face was red. She looked flustered. I smiled. "I twisted my ankle," she said, gesturing down to her swollen foot. "I should take you to Chopper," I said. She said. I reached to pick her up, but she put her hand out to stop me, then pointed towards the sun. "Let's watch the sunset first." But you're hurt," I told her. "I'm aware," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder, squeezing my arm tightly. I placed my hat over her damp hair. "Thank you," she said, pulling it down over her face, "for finding me and coming to my rescue." "I'll always come to your rescue," I told her, swinging my legs back and forth over the ledge. I looked at her, seeing her smiling but not seeing her eyes. I smiled too. This was how it was supposed to be. My stomach growled. We both laughed. The sky turned orange. "Oh, yeah, hey, Nami, is this the east or the west?" The ship rocked back and forth in the dock at Kokoyashi village. The citizens who had once had a fee imposed on their lives ran around freely happily are long forgotten. And what can I say? It's been 50 years. Most of the villagers had passed away since then. Hidden, deep in the forest, surrounded by tamed beasts and overgrown trees, was the house that Luffy and I lived in, out of sight to marines and pirates who came around when Luffy and I were gone. "Grandma!" Voices shouted as feet pounded the dock below. "Grandma, come tell us a story." My great-grandchildren were growing up so quickly. Kokoro, the oldest of the four, was 16, but he doted on me a lot. Amaya was the second oldest, at 15, and she was also Zoro's and Robin's great-grandchild as well. She had Zoro's passion for swords. Then there was Ayumi, the second youngest, 3 years younger than Amaya. And quite frankly, she was just like Luffy, only with my orange hair. Finally, there was Yukino, only 9, who I felt resembled me but with Luffy's hair color. Which story would you like to hear? They all inched closer as I sat down on the chair on deck. Ayumi and Yukino rested their heads on my lap, and Kokoro held my hand as he sat on the arm of the chair. "How about the story about you and Grandpa?" Ayumi said, looking up with me with her big dark eyes. "From the very beginning, when you first met." "From the very beginning?" I chuckled, resting my hand on their heads. I closed my eyes, feeling the motion of the ship, back and forth. "Do we have to call him Grandpa?" Yukino asked. "He still looks so young." "I want to be called Grandpa, so long as you call your great-grandmother, Grandma." The man I had loved for so many graying years came out of the kitchen, with Sanji and Harumi following closely behind. The two of them came to stay at Kokoyashi village, neither having a real family or hometown to go to. Chopper and Brook were with Robin and Zoro in Shimotsuki village, and Frankie had gone with Usopp to Syrup village where Usopp had married Kaya, which to this day I still found sweet. Luffy came towards me, his eyes just as soft as I remembered from our glory days. Yes, I remember the day we met well. The kids parted as he reached us, and he bent down to pick me up, sitting down and setting me on his lap, treating me like a child. He grinned that idiotic grin. "Between you and me, though, even today I could bounce off the walls." Everybody laughed, watching as their grandfather kissed my cheek. "So tell us, Grandma, please. We want to hear it too," my daughter called from the dock below. Luffy stretched his arm and helped her up here, while her husband pulled himself up on his own. They, too, lived on this island. They hadn't always, only after their daughter, my granddaughter, had died out at sea she too had become a pirate. Actually, all my grandchildren had passed away, leaving their children in their grandmother's care. The other two had died when a bomb had gone off too early. It brought a small tear to my eye just thinking about it, but no one seemed to notice, or otherwise ignored it. "Go on, Mom. Tell us stories like you used to when we were younger." "Shouldn't we wait for your brother to arrive?" her husband asked. "Zoro and the crew just picked us up, so we won't be arriving for a while." A voice came through the Den Mushi that I hadn't noticed before. Luffy must have brought it out at some point. "Start the stories, Mom. Hopefully we'll arrive before you finish them all." I smiled as the man I loved tightened his grip around my waist. I knew that he felt my lifespan ending too. It breaks him on the inside, I'm sure. He has years before he'll even near death. That rubber body of his more than likely going to last him quite a while. He kissed me once more before resting his chin on my shoulder. "Let's see," I began, closing my eyes and feeling the gentle rocking of the ship. It was so peaceful. From the very beginning, right? Well, you all know how I was a great thief. I had stolen a map from Buggy, leader of the Buggy Pirates. She closed her eyes slowly as her last sentence trailed off. I didn't need to check for a pulse, I knew I wouldn't find one. "Mom?" our children said tentatively. "Grandma?" As the realization came to them, tears rolled down their faces. I smiled sadly, blinking back tears fast. I have her one final kiss, then looked out to see a ship approaching fast. It nearly ran into our ship, but with Frankie's expertise it stopped short, and everybody hopped from one boat to another. "We're too late," Robin said sadly, gripping tightly onto Zoro's arm. Her eyes glistened with tears. Despite rushing, we were too late. Usopp, Chopper, Frankie and Brook were also crying, along with their own children and families, and Sanji turned his face away, hugging Harumi who sobbed loudly into his shirt. Zoro just looked straight ahead, seeing but not taking in what he saw. Finally, he moved away from Robin, coming over to me and offering to take her from me. I shook my head. No, I have her. What are we going to do? Our son and daughter asked, nearly simultaneously. The Mikan trees, I said, brushing her hair out of her face and smiling down at her. She looked like she was sleeping. We'll place her under the Mikan trees, beside Nijiko and Belmir. Zoro, if you don't mind, there's a shovel in the orchard. All right, he said, walking to Robin and giving her a quick hug before hopping over the edge of the ship like he was still 20. Somehow the others got the message I wanted to be alone, so they helped my great-grandchildren off the ship and slowly started back into town. A tear slid down my face, and I quickly caught it. I wasn't supposed to cry. I knew this had been coming. I only wished we could have died beside the other, so neither one of us could have suffered the pain that was felt when the other passed on. At least she was smiling. Did that mean she had led a content life? Had she been happy with me? It was a stupid question. I knew she had loved me as much as I loved her. And all of those memories we made and shared, all those stories that she had recollected in the hours before her death, just showed how much we loved each other. No correction. Love present tense. We still love each other. The Straw Hat Pirates knew better than anyone else that the spirit still lived on the planet. So as I picked her up and headed for the orchard, I smiled like I used to when we were younger. For Nami, it washes over me. It's cold, even a little chilling, but relaxing, very relaxing. I breathe in. I breathe out. Calmly, slowly, each drop hits my skin in hard strokes. My face stings with the beating it's taking, but it's fine. Sometimes I like days like this, where I can sit and be cleansed by the pure and untainted water that falls from the sky. It seems to beat the hardship out of me. Pain seems to disappear, along with awful memories. Bad things seem less so, and the world feels like it's nothing but a dream. Sure, the waves that come with the storm rock the ship, but the swaying is almost relaxing in its own way. Besides, it's just the rain that's hard. It wasn't a full-on storm. At least not yet. Perhaps when it became so, I'd go and change into something warm, before curling up in my bed with a nice book. Maybe he would sit beside me, taking a small nap or something. It'd be nice. It's always nice when we can spend time together in comfort. I breathe in. I breathe out. The air is damp, but I suppose that's only natural. Besides, I like it. It smells fresh, clean. It was unlike the usual salty sea air. I breathe in. I breathe out. I open my eyes slowly, calmly. I flinch slightly to see a large drop approaching rapidly. It hits my eyebrow. Despite the slickness of my face, I can feel its path as it slides down the bridge of my nose to the tip, where it meets other drops, forming into a larger droplet. Where that drop falls, I have no idea. I inhale through my mouth. A long, shaky breath. I can taste the rain. I turn my head to the side, and I see him watching me. Always watching me. He's watching me through the window. I'm surprised he's not out here. I wonder if we'll both catch colds, supposing he'll join me out here, in this weather. But idiots don't catch colds. He disappears from the window. I breathe in. I breathe out. The door opens. He starts walking towards me. In a matter of seconds he's drenched to the bone. That's how hard it's raining. But as his hair gets plastered to his forehead, his straw hat resting on his back, he just laughs, the same way he always laughs. She. I breathe in. I breathe out. I try to make it slow, but it hitches when his cold fingers brush against my arm. I try to make it calm, but my racing heart makes it otherwise. He lifts my chin up so that his gaze bears into mine. I lift my arms, and they wrap around his wet neck. In our close proximity, I can feel his heart beating. It seems to pound through his entire body. The water splashes and chills the two of us. Slowly his lips lower to mine. His eyes never stray from my face, watching, always watching. He's slow, calm. I breathe in. I breathe out. I shiver. I close my eyes. Our lips meet, and I can't help but think that this is nice, kinda like one of the romance novels that Robin keeps on the shelf in our bedroom and in the library. After all, isn't it every girl's dream to be kissed in the rain? What's this one? Luffy, it's a bunny. Oh, a bunny. I see it now. This one? It's a bird, Luffy. Bird, she, I knew that. I know you did, and, this one? It's eyelash. I suppose it does look like eyelash. But yes, a camel. How about this one? Ah. Turtle, Luffy, turtle. Turtle. She. I want to try. I brought my hands away from the light, smiling at Luffy. Go on. Do your own shadow puppet. He tilted his head, trying to think of a good figure to mimic with the shadows cast by his hands. His face suddenly brightened, and he shoved his hands into the light beam. Only he moved a little too quickly and energetically, nearly knocking the light over. Guess this one. A duck? It's a puppy, he said, sounding slightly offended. What am I saying? Of course it's a puppy, I smiled at him. This one? Crocodile? It's a mouse, Nami. Oh. Nami, I'm sorry, I laughed. You're not very good at this, Luffy. No, you're just unable to see the obvious, Luffy mumbled, pouting slightly as he crossed his arms. Then he launched forward again, a new idea striking him. How about this one? An elephant? A sea king? Oh, I said, not seeing it at all. You're bad at this, Luffy laughed. You're worse, I said, pushing him slightly. Let a pro make the shadow puppets. It's my turn. Luffy, share the light. We can make them both together, I fought playfully with him. Oh, yeah. She. Let's share. But he drew away too quickly, and I fell forward. He caught me though, before I fell. His face lowered towards mine, and then his eyes shifted to the side, and he paused, his lips inches from mine. I did the same, seeing our silhouettes on the wall. After a moment I asked, what do you think this one is? Luffy's gaze met mine, and he grinned. There's only one thing this can be, she. I waited for him to continue. He kissed me, before saying, love. This one is definitely love. Of sugar, Nami, what's that? I looked at what Luffy was pointing at, that? I'm not quite sure. Picking it up, I looked at it. It was some kind of food, which was obvious, considering we were in the marketplace. It was yellow, wrapped carefully in plastic. I held it to my nose, a very sweet scent coming to my nose, kind of lemony. So what is it? I'm not quite sure, I told him, looking back down at the basket I had taken it from. There were so many different colors. Yellow, green, red, orange, blue, purple, brown, pink and white. How much for these here? I asked the nearest merchant. 50 belly for a small bag full, he told me. We'll get 2 then, I said. I watched as he scooped out a handful, filling what was indeed a small bag. It was fine though, since it was pretty cheap compared to most other things in this particular market, the downs of being in a well-off town. Can I try one, Nami? Luffy asked as the bags were handed to me. I held the bag in my head for a moment before I nodded. Yeah, sure, just hold on a second. I opened one bag and pulled out 2 of them, still not sure what they were exactly. I unwrapped both of them, placing one in Luffy's outstretched hand before placing one in my mouth. It tasted as sweet as it smelled. I had taken an orange one, drawn to it by its Mikan-like color. And I was pleased that its taste was just as citrusy. I closed my eyes happily, then turned to the merchant. What are these? They're candies, he said, looking at me as if I were stupid. They're made from sugar and fruit juice. I said, looking at the bag in my hand. Candy. Nami, I want another, Luffy said, tugging on my sleeve. Let's go find a place to sit, I told him. He said, reaching to carry the bag for me, but I pulled it further away from him, knowing that even if each candy was individually wrapped, the entire bag would be empty by the time we did find a place to sit. Oh, he exclaimed suddenly, taking me up in his arms. I got the perfect place to sit. The roof? I asked, anticipating his next move. She, was all he said in response, stretching his arm and grabbing the nearest roof. I closed my eyes as we flew forward, though I was quite used to the motion. But I liked to imagine that we were somewhere else. All alone, just the 2 of us. It didn't matter where, but flying through the air with him like that always made me feel that way. There. How's this? I opened my eyes, seeing the entire town below us. I looked at the building that we were on, but I wasn't sure exactly. It didn't matter, it was nice. I shifted from off his lap and onto the ledge we were perched on, opening the bag and giving him a few more candies. I took a few out for myself, handpicking out all the orange ones. These are so good, Luffy said, struggling to unwrap them. Here, I took one from him, showing him how to unwrap it before handing it back to him. I looked back down at the town and smiled. This is a good town. Luffy agreed. Is that Robin down there? I asked, moving my foot out of the way to see below us. At that moment she glanced up. She seemed surprised to see us up there, but smiled and waved. I still looked around for an ear or something, but didn't see a thing. Nami, can I have more? You ate them all already? I asked, digging into the bag again. We should save some for the others. But it's good, Luffy murmured. He started swinging his feet back and forth. The more candy he ate, the more energetic he seemed to be. No more, Luffy, I told him, tying the open end of the bag into a knot. Ah, he said, standing up. What are you doing? I want to run around. Want to come? No, but he was gone before I could finish saying what I wanted to. You could drop me off on the ground at least. I looked down at the ground below. Neither Robin nor anyone else was anywhere to be seen. But I could see Luffy as he ran all over the town. His straw hat appearing in the streets, on top of other buildings, and sometimes in open windows. It was a game I started playing trying to find Luffy, wherever he may have been. Oh. There he was, on top of a sign in front of a bar. Was that him in that tree over there? Oh. He found Chopper. Oh, Chopper lost Luffy. Ah, there he was. Nope, he's gone. Ah nope, gone again. Eventually, he stopped showing up anywhere. I grew curious and admittedly, more than a little angry, but I couldn't do anything from all the way up there. I crossed my legs, resting my elbow on my knee, and resting my chin in my hand. I sighed, watching the sunset alone. When it was completely set, a hand poked my shoulder, and I looked down to see Robin standing below once again. Slowly, she lowered me to the ground. Did you have fun? Being abandoned the entire afternoon? Yeah. I had tons of fun, I told her, dusting myself off. Luffy? Back at the ship, she said. Angrily I marched back to the ship, Robin hot on my heels. He's in our room, Robin said, slipping away to where Zoro was napping on the lawn deck. I threw open the door, ready to give Luffy a piece of my mind. But he was sleeping. He must have worn himself out, running all over the town for the last few hours. I slinked over to him, brushing his hair out of his face. It was hard to stay mad when he looked so innocent. Even if the little bugger did abandon me in the worst place possible. I looked over to the table, spotting a marker. He wouldn't get off so easily. I uncapped the marker and wrote in clear letters, I am an IDI, heart. Then I hid the candy, because I definitely wasn't going to let him have so much sugar. Ever. Again. I wiggled my toes. I stretched. I leaned back and soaked up the rays of the sun as they bore down on me as I sat on a towel on the beach of the bay that we had anchored at. It was so peaceful. It's so hot, Luffy complained beside me. Let's go into the shade, Nami. Go ahead, I murmured, stretched my neck, always hoping to get a tan. He exhaled loudly, but didn't leave. He did shift, and I opened one eye to see what he was up to. I watched as he piled sand up on his feet, slowly building it up his legs. What are you doing? Burying myself in the sand, he said simply. Why not? He grinned, already up to his knees. Do what you will then, I shrugged, closing my eyes and resting the back of my head on the folds of my arms. I yawned, the heat making me tired. It didn't matter if I fell asleep, if I burnt it'd go down into a tan, right? I looked over, the faint sound of her snoring taking me by surprise. She, I said, slipping out of the sand that buried my legs and standing up. I started putting sand on her feet, but she kicked it off, her eyes opening sleepily. Luffy, what are you doing? Her voice trailed off. Just playing, I told her, freezing. Well, get out of my sun, she murmured, turning her face to the side. I nodded, taking a step over. I looked around. I had to find a way to do this quickly, or else she'd keep on waking up like that. And I was hungry. When was lunch? You just ate, she mumbled, as if reading my mind. She, I laughed. I started building a pile of sand beside her. It was going to be huge. And then, when it was high enough, I was going to push it onto her, covering her completely. But the pile wouldn't build much higher than my knee, the grains just sliding down to the bottom of the small hill. Out of frustration I kicked the hill, sending the sand all over Nami. Luffy, without even seeing her face I could just see that vein ticking in her temple. Sorry, I said half-heartedly, starting to take off as she rose to her feet. Luffy, she shouted after me, and I glanced back to see her running after me. She, I grinned as I kept my legs moving. There was this part of the beach that was filled with these large rocks, sand filling the varying distances between them, and I dodged through them, before finding a hiding spot behind one boulder. I crouched, waiting for her to come around so that I could pounce on her. But at the last moment I heard a slip on the rock above, and I looked up to see Nami coming down on me. I caught her, falling back into the sandy ground. She laughed mockingly as she laid on top of me. I grinned, and my stomach growled. "You're such a pain in the ass," she told me, rolling off of me. "But I'm your pain in the ass, right?" I looked up at her. She gazed down at me for a moment before smiling. You're also my idiot, my captain, my idiot, my bottomless pit, my idiot." I could go on forever, Luffy. I reached up to grab her hand. Instead of helping me to my feet though, she crouched down beside me, crossing her arms over her legs, emphasizing her. She leaned in and kissed me. Then she got me with a sucker punch of sand, getting a few of the grains in my eyes. By the time I blinked them out, she was gone. I jumped to my feet, then climbed on top of the rock, watching as she made her way out of this rock area. She slipped on the sand, and I grinned. Silently, still watching her as she got a head start, I took off my hat, wiping the sand off of it. Then I took off after her. They moved so gracefully within their liquid confinements. And they were all so colorful. So beautiful. I could watch them for hours, sitting here on the bench in front of the glass. It was relaxing. "Nami?" I glanced over my shoulder at Luffy as he approached. "Oh, Luffy. What are you doing in here?" he asked. "In here, the aquarium bar." I looked back up at the fish, before responding. "I'm just thinking." "Oh," he said as he strolled closer to me. He took a seat behind me as I sat folded there, leaning forward onto my knees. I was silent for a moment as I watched the aquatic creatures swim back and forth in their limited space. Their fins seemed to dance in the water, reminding me of my hair and how it floated in smooth disarray when I was fully submerged underwater, especially now that my hair was longer. "We need to catch more fish," Luffy murmured, sitting up on his knees so that he could press his face against the glass. "So go catch more fish," I shrugged, giving a small laugh. In a little while, he backed away from the glass, tracing his finger on the cool surface. Usually I would have scolded him for putting his fingerprints on the glass, but watching the fish swim made me feel like there was no point in rebutting him for something I knew he would do again and again. "I think it'd be really cool to be a fish," I said after a moment, floating through the water, swimming with nowhere in particular in mind, worries fleeting as fast as they come. Not a care in the world except for the current rushing past you in the middle of the vast sea, and marines and pirates don't go after fish. "I'd want to be a sea king," Luffy exclaimed. "Well, I suppose marines and pirates go after sea kings," I muttered. "But I'd want to be one of the deep-sea dwelling fish, the ones you don't see unless you're as low as Fishman Island. Other fish would attack them," Luffy pointed out. Well, he had to bring something up against everything I said, though I didn't think he had any intentions of doing so, still. "And I thought you didn't like fishmen." I never said I wanted to be a fishman, or rather a fishwoman, but an actual fish, with fins and gills and a long flowing tail, Luffy. "So a mermaid?" "Luffy." I sighed with exasperation. "A fish, like these guys right here." "Why?" "Because it'd be different." I shook my head, not knowing what to say to him anymore. "Why would you want to be different?" "I never said I wanted to be different either, I just said it'd be cool to be a fish." "Oh," he said, turning back to the fish in the tank. He laughed, she. "Good. Because I don't want you to be a fish. I like you just the way you are." I smiled. "Thanks, Luffy." She. We both continued to watch the fish for a moment, silence surrounding us in a peaceful manner. I could hear Luffy's breathing. Awed, so calm, with no particular worries on his mind, I was sure. Luffy was like a fish, ironic, since he couldn't swim. I had read somewhere that some fish only had a memory span of 3 seconds. That was Luffy. Alright. Though it wasn't his memory, he had a really good memory, but his train of thought that jumped around. For the most part it was predictable: food, fun, food, sleep, food, fun, fight, food, fun, sleep. But there were those moments that I could honestly say I had no idea what was going on up in that rubbery skull of his. "They look delicious," Luffy said suddenly. "Food. Go figure. Do you ever think about anything other than food?" I rolled my eyes, leaning so that my back rested against his forearm. Or fun, or sleep. He laughed for a moment before he became quiet. Well, I think about you. I turned to look at him, more than food. He nodded. I mustn't have looked like I believed him, because he pulled me in for a quick kiss our lips, meeting for a mere few seconds before he pulled away and told me once more. I think about you, Nami. All the time. It's not safe to go that way. He's there. He's dangerous. He's evil. It's best to stay away. Don't go that way. It's like a death wish to approach him. Get on your ship and leave. You can't do anything for us here. You're pirates. You're just as bad as he is. You're pirates? Leave now. You're pirates. Do you want something from us too? What's wrong with them? Usopp grumbled as we walked through the town, their condescending gazes making him squirm. Go back to the ship if you don't like it, I told him, looking around. Sanji, restock quickly. Chopper, you go with Robin and gather what you need for medicine. I'll go get more material for my weapon development, Frankie said. I'll go with him, Usopp chirped. And what are you doing, Nami? Brook asked. Luffy and I will check out the commotion, I said, meeting the eyes of a villager, who quickly bowed her head in shame. I frowned. Let's go, Luffy. I'll tag along. Brook strolled behind us. Whatever, I didn't care. They're scared of us, Luffy murmured. Bad pirate experiences, I told him, my fingers barely grazing the back of his hand. We'll help them overcome it. I smiled, slipping my fingers into his palm. Well, you helped me overcome it. He squeezed my hand gently. Finally we saw what was scaring them. There was a band of pirates standing there in the middle of the town square, holding their guns to a couple of children. A young woman fought to get through, but no one would let her get to the kids. She was in tears. So were the children. Next time, never mind. There won't be a next time for you, the pirate said, his fingers slowly going to the trigger. Let this be a lesson for all. Oi, I began, taking a step forward. Luffy was one step ahead of me. His fist went flying through the air, hitting the captain right in the jaw. The guy flew back, landing on one of his crew members. Yo-ho-ho. What a bone-shattering punch. Brook laughed loudly. Bones? Brook nudged me a little. Get it? Your impertinence amazes me. I rolled my eyes at Brook. This is a serious matter, Brook. So get your act together, you ass. Ass? I don't have one. Skull joke? Yo-ho-ho. Luffy's serious mask cracked a little with a twitch of the corner of his lips. Oi! The pirate crew shouted, rushing to help their captain up. He waved them away, getting up himself and making a point of dusting himself off. In his temple, I could see a vein ticking angrily, but the rest of his face remained impassive. Slowly he raised his gaze to settle upon the three of us. The children had scuttled away, their mother finally let through the lines and holding them tightly. Who are you? He asked, cracking his knuckles. I wondered if he was trying to be intimidating. I mean, I supposed he looked scary to these villagers, but he was nothing like Zoro or Sanji, or even Luffy, when he was serious, with blood dripping from swords and feet and fists. Right now their captain just looked pathetic. Eh, don't you know? Brook laughed. I'm the Soul King? I wasn't talking to you, he snapped. Ouch. That hurt. It kills me in my ears to hear that, Brook said dramatically. Then he perked up. But I have no ears. And I'm already dead. Yo-ho-ho, double skull joke. Eh, me? Luffy asked, pointing at himself and looking around. She. I'm Luffy. Luffy? As in Straw Hat Luffy? I lifted the hat that rested lightly on his back and placed it on his head, and said, the one and only. And what are you? His little bitch. I clenched my fist. But Luffy was faster, his fist striking him hard the moment the words left his mouth. No one, Luffy began firmly, his grinning face completely hidden, not even a trace within his shadowed eyes. No one calls Nami a bitch. The men that backed up their captain, and even innocent citizens, started fainting. Even I started feeling a little dizzy, but I gripped Luffy's hand, forcing myself to remain standing. He had used haki on previous occasions, but this was so intense that Brook too was supporting himself with his cane. If he had skin, I'm sure his knuckles would be white. The captain stood up, however, which only made Luffy angrier. He lashed out, knocking the man onto his ass, then struck him again. He kept going until the man laid there unconscious. Luffy wiped sweat from his forehead, still tense and angry. He looked like he wanted to keep going, but he appeared to be having an inner battle. It wasn't respectable to hit a man that was already unconscious, but hurting me and calling me names wasn't something he'd just let someone get away with unscathed. So I did the only thing I could do. Reassure him. Luffy, that's enough, I told him, wrapping my arms around him. His power ebbed away, and he looked down at me. Thank you. He embraced me with one arm, kissing my forehead, and then he looked at the captain and his men, laying there on the cobble street. Luffy turned to me, leading me away as shouting drew near. Marines? It didn't matter. We'd be long gone before we'd know for sure. Brook followed closely behind. Always so quick on the draw, he commented, and Luffy only glanced back. No, I corrected Brook, also peering back at our skeleton comrade. Then I looked up at Luffy and smiled, bringing his hand to my lips for a quick peck on his knuckles. Always so quick to my rescue. Luffy laughed, easing up a little, and I pulled him to a stop so that I could kiss him, full on the lips. Brook whistled as he tried to be nonchalant. Luffy smiled against my lips and broke away. I reached up and brushed a stray hair back behind his ear, smiling earnestly. My hero. How empty. Nami looked around disappointedly at the barren land. The island that we had arrived at was supposed to be one of the prettiest islands on the Grand Line, filled with spring flowers and beautiful trees, the cleanest water and loots of food. Supposed to be. Instead there was hardly any glass, let alone flowers, and the trees were awkward and bare, and the only water we could see from where we stood was the sea. And there was no food. Where's the food? Where are the beautiful flowers? Chopper asked. Where are the flourishing trees? Frankie put his sunglasses on top of his head, looking out across the flat area we had landed on. Where are the delicious animals? Sanji asked, shoving his hands in his pockets. Yo-ho-ho. This island is as dead as I am. Brook laughed, bending down to overturn a rock. And that, my friends, is quite dead indeed. Yo-ho-ho, Skull joke. This sucks, Nami said, crouching to grab a fistful of sand. She let it run slowly through her fingers, overturning her hand completely when it started to slow down. I really wanted to see the beauty of this island. Where's the food? I wonder what happened, Robin murmured, taking a step forward. Nami, you said there'd be food. I know, she snapped at me. She lowered her head. I guess I was wrong. I'm going to find a town, Robin said, turning to face us. I'll come along. Zoro moved to her side. As too, everyone else chipped in, except Frankie, who opted to stay behind and watch the ship. I'll come, too, Nami mumbled, moving her feet sluggishly. She looked up at me. Coming, Luffy? She looked so disappointed with the island. No, I said, I want to explore. We will be never mind, just do what you want. We'll meet up at the ship at sundown. Alright? We'll leave then too. We got here by eternal pose, and I don't want to wait and find out how long it'll take for the log pose to set. I nodded. I watched them as they went, glancing at Frankie. What's up, Luffy? Frankie asked. Adventure, I grinned, and food. He just laughed. Be careful, alright? Frankie said, turning and heading back for the ship. I scowled. I'm always careful. Then I was off. I hurried towards the bare trees, leaping over a large fallen branch. I ran through the trees, every stride making my precious hat flap against my back. The dead forest seemed to last forever, and when it ended, I almost didn't notice because I was focused on something else. A valley. I had almost gone over the edge, and if I hadn't reached over and grabbed the nearest tree, I would be a rubber pancake at the bottom. It was so deep. I wonder if there was something edible down there. I leapt over the edge, holding my hat to my head. She, I laughed, and I grinned when my feet touched the ground. He's late, I murmured, kicking at the sand and sitting down on the beach, facing the orange sky left behind by the sun. We could always leave without him, Usopp said. The ship only needs one captain anyway. I don't think any of us would ever accept you as our captain, Zoro muttered, walking by me and sitting against a large piece of driftwood. He'll come, he always does. Would it kill him to be punctual though? You would think he'd be hungry though. Sanji leaned over the edge of the ship. Poor kid hasn't eaten all day. Maybe we should search for him. Chopper looked more anxious than I felt. I had a bad premonition, and I turned towards the trees. Luffy burst out of them, carrying a large bag behind him, nearly double his size. that bobbled up and down as he ran. "Get on the ship," he shouted, laughing. We all stood there dumbfounded until we saw an army chasing after him. "Get on the ship," he called again, waving his arms. We all climbed aboard, and Frankie opened the sails. As we pulled away, Luffy's arm grabbed the mast and he shot aboard. "Phew," he sighed, wiping his brow as he sat there on the lawn deck. The army shouted from the shore. A closer look made them to appear more like tribe warriors. "What was that about?" I asked him. "I don't know," Luffy grinned. "You managed to find people?" We hadn't managed to find anyone, which wasn't surprising in the almost wasteland of an island. She, no, they found me." He laughed. "I don't know why they chased me though. All I did was take some of their fruit, and I found this really pretty flower." Fruit? Flowers? On that land? There was this valley, and it had so much fruit. It was delicious, she. "Idiot," I smacked him upside the head. "If you didn't disturb them, we could have all seen it." "Sorry," he didn't look all that sorry, "but I brought you some fruit." He opened his bag, revealing its contents. The fruit were larger than normal fruit, but still came in regular shapes and colors. Whoa, Chopper, Usopp, Frankie and Brook awed. And Nami, Luffy dug into his pocket as Robin came out of the kitchen, having disappeared previously into the library. "This is for you." He pulled out a flower, which indeed was absolutely beautiful. Luffy," Robin began. "That's one of the sacred flowers of this island." "Eh? Really? It's probably why they were so angry." Robin nodded towards the bay. "I suppose it's too late to worry about that now," I said, taking the flower from Luffy. I placed a small kiss on his cheek. "Thank you." "I just didn't like seeing you disappointed," he grinned. I felt my heart clench. I loved him, I really did. "So is this why you came back so late?" I asked. "Eh? No," he grinned. "Then was it because you were being chased?" Frankie asked. "Nope." "Then why?" She. Luffy scratched the back of his head. I fell asleep. We all face-palmed. But really, what did we expect? Especially from Luffy, the two of us lay on the bench of the library. The sky was dark, and the stars were out, and the crescent moon shone down through the window. It was calm and quiet, except for our breathing. Luffy's head was on my lap, and I gently shifted through his hair with my fingers. He, too, was playing with my hair, the long strands that cascaded past my breasts. He rolled the strands between his fingers until there was nothing left to hold, then would pick up another strand and do it again. I don't know how many times he repeated it, I lost count. We didn't speak much, there was nothing to discuss, not really. I had already scolded him earlier for the damage he had taken during our battle yesterday, after he woke up this afternoon. We just sat there in a comfortable silence. His straw hat rested on his stomach, recently patched up so that no holes were in it anymore. He had bandages everywhere. Around his stomach, on his arms, even one on his lower leg. I felt my heart squeeze slightly every time my gaze fell upon the white bandages on his tanned skin. The hand that wasn't playing with his hair reached out tenderly to touch the bandage. His hand came up and grabbed mine, holding it and rubbing his thumb back and forth against my palm, as if to reassure me. "I love you," he said, looking up and meeting my gaze. "I love you more," I said, a smile playing on my lips. "I love you more than Sanji loves girls," Luffy said, his gaze going back to my hair as he combed his fingers gently through it. I laughed, the sound filling the entire room. "I love you more than Zoro loves his swords. I love you more than Chopper wants to be able to cure everything." His own lip corners were slowly turning up. "I love you more than Robin wants to find out about the blank century. I love you more than Frankie wants his ship to make it to the final island in the Grand Line. I love you more than Sanji wants to find all blue. I love you more than Zoro wants to be the greatest swordsman in the world. I love you more than Brook wants to meet up with Laboon. I love you more than the amount of cool weapons Frankie has created, and will create. I love you more than the number of skull jokes Brook will ever say in his lifetime." "Brook's going to live forever," Luffy said. "Which means a lot of skull jokes, Luffy," I told him. "Well, I love you more than Usopp lies in a year." "That's a good one," I complimented him. She, thank you," he grinned. "I love you more than Vivi loves her country. Vivi loves her country a lot," he said. "Exactly," I smiled down at him. "I love you more than Zoro loves sleep and sake." I love you more than the number of fish in the sea. I love you more than the number of times I've thrown a punch and the number of times I will throw a punch in the future. I love you more than the number of times Chopper has and will have to nurse you to good health. I love you more than the number of times Sanji has and will bring you and Robin a snack and a drink. I love you more than the amount of meat Sanji has made for you, past, present and future. I love you more than the number of people that have felt the sharp side of Zoro's swords. I love you more than the number of Marines you've made frustrated. That's not a lot, he said defensively. Believe me, Luffy, it's a lot. I tugged playfully on one of his strands of hair. Eh? Really? Well, I love you more than you love your Mikans? And I love you more than you love your meat. Shi. I love you more than I love my meat too. That one doesn't count, I already said that one. Oh, well, I love you more than you want to map the entire world. I love you more than I want all the gold in the world. I love you more than Robin and Zoro love each other, combined. I love you more than the number of pirates that are after One Piece. He was silent for a long moment, then looked at me with his warm eyes and smiled widely. I love you more than I want to be Pirate King. I placed my hands on either side of his head, pulling it up, stretching his neck, and kissing him. It was a long, passionate kiss, one that left us both breathless, and yet somehow yearning for more. We paused for a breath, but he caught my lips quickly once more, now sitting almost upright, holding himself up by gripping the back of the bench behind me. When we finished, I leaned my right cheek against his breath hot on my ear, and I'm sure mine was just as hot on his. I nuzzled him lightly before whispering in his ear. And that, Luffy, is how much I love you. He drew back, looking me in the eye with that devious look that he possessed sometimes. He leaned in close again, and my breath hitched as his lips barely pressed against mine. I could feel them, lightly there, but not quite touching. I felt them stretch into a grin, and tickle my lips as he spoke. And this, Nami, is how much I love you. Where's Luffy? I asked Robin as I came out onto deck. I hadn't seen him all day. I knew he was having fun with the boys, but for him to be absent for so long was strange. He was with Usopp and Chopper the last time I checked, Robin murmured, turning the page. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, Nami. Yeah, well, absence doesn't make me feel at ease with those three idiots. She only chuckled. I went to the railing and looked over, gazing out towards the island. Weren't they done exploring yet? There was an unsettling feeling at the pit of my stomach, not like a bad premonition, just. You could go look for them. I'm sure Luffy wouldn't mind if you interrupted their fun and games. I wouldn't do that to him, I sighed, turning around and sitting down on the ground. It's kind of lonely, boring, uneventful. No, I denied it. Then I gave her a half-hearted smile. Is that how you feel when Zoro's away for too long? Yes, she said easily, flipping the page. But then, Zoro was never one to crowd me in the first place. Unlike Luffy, who always seemed to hover nearby. Maybe the distance was a good thing. I shouldn't have to count on Luffy for company and entertainment. After a few moments, I got up and went to the library. I had finished my map earlier, so instead I gazed at the shelves absent-mindedly. Several minutes passed looking over the title before I just grabbed one, not caring what I had taken from the shelf. I sat lazily on the bench by the window that Luffy usually made faces through whenever I was working. But even though I had the book held to my face, the words did nothing but stare back at me, empty and lifeless. I constantly found myself glancing up and out the window, expecting him to be hanging there, watching me. The door opened, and my gaze swung to the door. I'll admit I was a little too hopeful, and Frankie just laughed when he saw my disappointment. Lonely? No, I said firmly, holding the book back up to my face to hide how embarrassed I was. I wasn't completely lonely, and even if I were, I would never admit it. He laughed, and I heard his footsteps go across the room to the ladder that went up to the bath. But that's where they stopped. I pulled the book away to see that his eyes were on me. Everything okay, Nami? He asked. Everything's fine, I said. Why? Because you're holding one of Zoro's books on swords. I know you're a fast reader, but if that's really your last resort, then maybe you should spend a bit more money on books. I closed the book and looked at the cover. What do you know? It was a book on swords. Are you missing Luffy? No, it's just kind of peaceful without him. I paused. Too peaceful. It's strange. So you miss him? He grinned. I already said that I didn't, I muttered. It's fine, Nami. In fact, it's super, super cute. Whatever, I grumbled, watching as he climbed the ladder up to the bath. With a sigh, I got up, putting the book away, one of Zoro's books. I really was out of it. I exited onto the deck, glancing at the Mikan trees I had already tended to this morning. Luffy had tried helping me. In the end, I just made him sit off to the side. I could hear Brook playing a song on the deck below, soft and peaceful, yet sad. It infuriated me, because the slow tune matched my mood a little too much. I went to the railing and threw my shoe at him. It hit him smack dab in the middle of the forehead. Nami, you could have just asked me to stop if you didn't like the song, Brook called to me. You nearly gave me a heart attack. Except for the fact that my heart is already stopped. Yo-ho-ho, skull joke. The other shoe followed. A little happier, I rolled my shoulders before I headed down to the kitchen. Nami SWA. And Sanji greeted me as my foot touched the ground. Would you like a snack? No, thank you, I mumbled as I headed back towards Robin. Luffy should be hungry right about now. Done reading already? Robin chuckled, not even glancing up from the page she was reading. Wanna play chess? I asked, ignoring her. You sure you want to lose? I won't lose. I lost 3 times. Once more, I half begged. I hadn't been concentrating. I had been staring at the fish and remembering the conversation I'd had with Luffy a while back. You'll lose again. You're so positive, I said, rolling my eyes. She smiled. I'm positive you'll lose. Har, har, I laughed sarcastically, beginning to set up the game again. I looked at the clock. How long would they be gone for? And why had it only been 5 minutes since I last checked the clock? Time flies faster when you're not paying attention to it, Robin said. This is ridiculous, I said angrily, standing up. I feel like some lovesick damsel in distress. I'm not the kind of girl that sits around in this restless mood, waiting helplessly for my hero to save me. It's not a bad thing to feel that way, she mused. Not a bad thing. I turned on her. What part of this isn't awful? Nami, she looked at me. It's only love. I opened my mouth to say something, but the door swung open, and Luffy burst in. He grinned when he looked at me, and Robin slipped out the door. I'm back, he said. I see that, I murmured, looking away. Did you miss me? He asked, that silly grin playing on his lips. I hardly noticed you were gone, I lied. Really? Because I missed you a lot, he pouted, looking like a child. Oh, I asked. He walked over to me, wrapping his arms around my shoulder and became like a deadweight, almost making me topple over. Being with Usopp and Chopper is fun, but Nami, I like being with you. I like being with you, too, Luffy, I told him. So you did miss me? He looked up suddenly at me, perking up. No, he pouted again. I wouldn't admit it though, no matter what kind of face he made. Through the doors we heard laughter. Then Frankie's voice came faintly through the door. And I thought Usopp was the liar. What are you guys doing? I found Usopp and Chopper down in the workshop. Upgrading Nami's Klima tact as a birthday present to her, Usopp said. I'm just watching, Chopper said. I bought Nami a book at the last town we docked in. I picked up one of the bowls of paint Usopp had made. They were in all sorts of colors, but mostly blues as he tried to create a blue similar to the color of the Klima tact. You're using all these? No, Chopper shook his head. Usopp was just trying to see if he could create a nicer blue for Nami. Oh, I said, continuing to look at them. I stuck my finger in one, then brought it to my lips, but Usopp smacked my hand away. That's made with chemicals, Baka, Usopp made a face, so that the paint doesn't come off the Klima tact. Oh, I laughed. I wiped my finger off on my shorts. Can I use the paint if you're not going to? Well, it is a waste, otherwise just don't eat it, Usopp warned. I nodded, picking up all the bowls and balancing them on top of each other. And don't spill them on deck, Frankie will shoot me. Alright. I took the paints and climbed up, heading for the men's quarters. I put them down on the table there. Oh, Luffy. Brook came in. Hi, what are you doing for Nami for her birthday? He asked. I don't know yet, I mumbled, looking down at my feet. My stomach rumbled, but I ignored it. Robin could only distract Nami so long on the island. Why don't you learn to play a song for her? Brook said. I can teach you, at the very least, happy birthday. I tilted my head, considering it. Okay. Here, Brooke began to hand me his violin. Careful, alright? I nodded, taking it in my hands. He showed me how to hold it, and then you draw the bow. The bow? The stick-like thing in your hands, Luffy, he explained. Oh. Pull it across the strings gently. A screeching sound filled the room. Yo-ho-ho. It's a good thing I don't have ears to hear with, Brooke laughed. Skull joke. Yo-ho-ho. But don't worry. Luffy, not everyone gets it on the first try. Try again. Firm grip on both but be gentle. Gentle, but firm. Another screech and then a string broke. I'm sorry, Brooke, I said, handing him back the violin. It's alright, Luffy, it was just the string. I think I should do something else for Nami, I told him. Where's Frankie? Working with Sanji, Brooke said. Frankie, working with Sanji? That I had to see. She. Thanks, Brooke. I rushed out of the men's quarters and up to the kitchen. No, you'll ruin my frosting job, Sanji shouted as I entered the room. I know what I'm doing, Frankie argued. What are you guys doing? I asked, bouncing over to the kitchen. I thought you'd be coming around, Sanji sighed, reaching behind him to grab a plate of meat. Go on. Go eat, get out of here. I just want to know what you're doing, I said, taking the plate anyway. I readily ate the meat as I watched. It's a cake. And this banner is supposed to come out the top, Frankie said, pulling it wide so that I could read Happy Birthday Nami in fine and curling letters. That's going to be so cool, I told him. They both agreed. Nami SWA, and will love my cake, Sanji said. I've incorporated her Mikans and some delicious chocolate into the batter and frosting. Can I try it? I asked. No, it did look good though. I think Nami would like it. Robin and Zoro are working in the library, setting up for everything, Frankie said. I thought she was distracting Nami in town. That's her produced double, Sanji said. He got that lovey-dovey look on his face, and what a double it is. Oi, if you're not going to help me, get out of here, Frankie said. I've done everything up to this point, Sanji said. I made the cake. Thanks for the food, I called, rushing out the door. I hope they sorted out everything before Nami came back. I shot up to the library, bursting through the door. Oh, Luffy, Robin greeted me, her arms crossed in front of her and directing her extra limbs to decorate the higher corners of the room. Zoro was lying on the bench. Whoa, it looks so cool, I said, looking around the room. I'm glad you like it, Robin said. What did you do for Nami for her birthday? I asked. You know that shopping trip I took Nami on today? I'm paying for everything, Robin said. She shook her head. She knows how to use people's generosity to her advantage. She, I laughed. And what about Zoro? I'm paying off my debt, Zoro said, not opening his eye and pointing to the corner of the room where beside a pile of gifts there was a bag of gold. How'd you get that much? I did some bandit hunting. Zoro sat up. What are you getting for the witch? Be nice, Robin told him. I only shrugged. You're not going to get her anything? Zoro asked. After she went through all the trouble on your birthday to make sure you had fun? That's it though, I murmured, pursing my lips as I sat in the center of the room. I don't know what I can do to make her just as happy. Luffy, Robin came and knelt in front of me. Remember, it's the thought that counts, alright? The thought, I murmured, thinking hard. The thought. Whatever you give Nami will make her happy, because it's you giving it to her, she explained. So a mysterious gift, I mumbled. But you better hurry up and come up with something. Nami'll be coming back soon. She went over to Zoro, holding a balloon to his lips. He blew it up quickly, and Robin rewarded him with a kiss. Where does Nami keep the extra paper? I asked suddenly, getting to my feet. Map paper? No, regular paper, I said. Bottom drawer on the right, she said, nodding towards the desk. Thanks, I rushed over, grabbing a thick pile of paper from the drawer she directed me to. There was also some ribbon, and I took that too. What are you going to do? Zoro asked. She, you'll see, I said, rushing down to the men's quarters. I set out the papers and looked at the paint. Nami was going to love it. Robin and I arrived back on the ship. No one was in sight on the lawn deck, and we went up to the girls' quarters to put the bags down. She disappeared into thin air after she set them down. I had suspected that it wasn't actually her the entire time, but I played along after all. She was paying. Humming, I exited my room. Kitchen was my first assumption. It was cloudy out, so an indoor party would probably be better. But no one was in the kitchen. So I climbed up to the deck above, heading for the library. "Happy birthday," they shouted when I came inside. There were balloons and streamers everywhere. "Thank you," I smiled at them. I looked at all their faces. "Where's Luffy?" "Still working on your present," Robin said, leading me over to my desk. "Let us give you all our presents first." "Thank you," I said again, taking a seat in my chair. "Here, Nami," Usopp proudly presented his gift. "I spent weeks working on it." "Liar," Chopper said, "it only took all morning." I laughed, opening it to reveal my Clima-tact, upgraded and freshly painted. "It's great. I like this blue better than the previous shade. Thank you." Chopper pushed a rectangular gift my way, and within its clumsy wrapping job I found a book. "Ah, thank you," I said, placing a kiss on Chopper's forehead. "Oi, where's my kiss?" Usopp asked. "Don't ask Nami SWA. And to kiss a baboon like you," Sanji shouted at him. Zoro placed a large amount of gold in front of me. I raised an eyebrow at him. "My debt," Zoro murmured. I looked at it closely, examining the quality, and then lifting it up to judge its weight accordingly. "You're under by 100,000, I told him, setting it off to the side. "But God damn it, woman," Zoro looked exasperated. "But because you paid off so much of it at once," I continued, ignoring his outburst. "I won't add interest until the time comes when you owe me more." "Thanks," Zoro rolled his eyes. He walked over and, "I'd be happier if you just annexed the entire thing." "Ah," Zoro's head swung around and I smiled. "Just kidding." "Here," Robin said, handing me a small box. "You just took me shopping," I said, taking the gift anyway. She only laughed as I gave her a hug. "Earrings. They're so pretty." "Thank you, Robin." "Here, Nami SWA. And Sanji presented me with a fancy box. Inside was a diamond necklace." "How sweet," I told him, holding his chin while I kissed his cheek. Blood gushed from his nose and I let him fall to the floor. "Who's next?" "Me," Frankie said, setting a few boxes on my desk in front of me. I gave him a funny look before opening one of them. A charm bracelet, more earrings, and a stick. "They're all weapons." "The earrings and bracelet charms are all bombs, don't worry though, they only go off if you open the cylinder and press the button. You can determine which bomb to go off by twisting the bottom of the cylinder, the dial, to right, left, and then the specific charm shape. So the star would be the star charm, etc., right?" I asked, looking at the bottom. "Yes," he said. "Just make sure you set it properly." "I will, thank you, Frankie." I also gave him a kiss on the cheek. "What?" Usopp said. "This is unfair. So this is what all those explosions have been about the past couple of days," Robin murmured, ignoring Usopp. Frankie said. I was trying to think of a way to make sure she could wear them without worrying about blowing off a limb or her head. "Well, thanks for your consideration," I told him. "I'm sure you'll put them to good use. And, Nami-san," Brook said, bringing out his violin, "I wrote you a song." "That's sweet of you," I smiled, giving him a small kiss on the cheek quickly, before leaning on my desk as he began to play. I closed my eyes as I listened, unable to keep myself from wondering where Luffy was. The music ended, and the door was thrown open. "Sorry," Luffy apologized, rushing over to me. I was waiting for the paint to dry. "Paint?" I asked, half standing. Luffy set down something in front of me. It was a bunch of papers held together by ribbon. I looked at it a moment and Luffy went on to tell me what it was, though it was obvious. "It's a book." "A book," I smiled. I wrote it." I opened the first page, smiling widely when I saw his childish doodles and his messy writing. "I love it." "Eh? Really?" He looked relieved. I looked up at him. "Thank you." "Cake time," Frankie said. As they walked over to the cake on the quick table that Frankie had whipped together, Luffy told me about the story he had created. "See, we're pirates in the story. And I become the Pirate King, and there you've finished mapping the world." "It's wonderful, Luffy," I said, flipping the pages slowly and making my way to the end. Everybody seemed to be in it, though from his drawings I really couldn't tell who was who. "How does it end?" "With a happily ever after." I looked up at him, in awe of how incredibly sweet he was. I stood up, leaning over the table to give Luffy a kiss on the lips, holding his face to mine. His paint-covered fingers brushed against my cheek, and for a moment in time, despite being in the crowded library, it felt like it was just the two of us. "Here Nami swa oi, Luffy," Sanji shouted at us. "Yo-ho-ho! What a sight, too bad I don't have eyes to see with, Nami. Do you think I could see your birthday pant? Somebody had hit him for me." "Get a room," Frankie called. "Everybody got a kiss except for me," Usopp cried. I smiled as I kissed Luffy again. "Best birthday ever." He drew his wooden sword, holding it to the throat of the other, green-haired boy. He was in dire need of a haircut, his black hair falling in front of his eyes. Still, he grinned, even as his friend got the upper hand, knocking him back and onto the ground. His straw hat went flying. She, little Luffy laughed, rubbing the back of his head. "I've never been good with swords." "Dummy, if you want to be a pirate, you have to learn how to use a sword," a young Zoro crossed his arms. Something whizzed by them, and their lying friend shouted down to them, "Or you have to have good accuracy." "I'm strong enough without swords." Luffy jumped to his feet defiantly, grabbing his hat. "My punch is as strong a pistol." "You guys are so childish," the small redhead said as she walked by. She carried a book in her arms, its contents purely on weather. "Pirates are bad people." "I agree, Nami-chan," Sanji said, running up to them, panting heavily. "Why did you guys leave me behind?" "Because nobody wants you around," Zoro growled at him. "No, not all pirates," Luffy said, ignoring the two of them. "Not all of them are bad, Nami." "Yes, they are," she said firmly. "You should just listen to your grandfather and aspire to be a marine." Why?" Luffy frowned deeply. "Because," she blushed a deep red, quickly looking away. "Because then I can be your navigator." "Navigator?" he asked. "I'll travel with you, and guide you to new places," she said, "and keep you out of storms as best as I can. That's what a navigator does." "Why can't you be my navigator if I'm a pirate?" Luffy sat, crossing his legs and arms, frowning even deeper. "I'm going to be the Pirate King." "Because I refuse to be a pirate," she said. "Then that makes her the damsel in distress," Usopp called down from a nearby tree. "Damsel in distress?" Luffy questioned. "It's the girl that the hero saves," Usopp scolded him. "I'm the hero. I thought you were the pirate." Nami tightened her grip on the book. "I'm both." Luffy laughed. "You can't be a pirate and a hero," Nami told him. "I can so," Luffy said. "Play with us, Nami," Usopp called, lowering himself from the tree. "No," Nami said, turning and beginning to walk away. "Zoro be the bad guy," Usopp called. What do I do?" "Take Nami and run. Put her into dangerous situations and we have to save her," Usopp grinned. "No," Nami shrieked as Zoro picked her up and began running away. "You bastard!" Sanji took off after him. "No, Sanji. Only one bad guy," Usopp called after him. She, it's fine," Luffy said. "How long do we wait until we go after them?" Usopp paused. "Right away, she. Okay." Luffy took off running. "Wait for me," Usopp called after him. "Kya, oi, Luffy," Usopp called, sliding to a halt. "This way." They changed the course of their direction accordingly, hurrying after Nami's scream. They stumbled, coming to the edge of a cliff. "Zoro! You pig!" Nami was shouting at him, tied up and hanging from a tree that branched out over a waterfall. Zoro sat on the branch above her. Sanji was nowhere in sight. "I'm going to kill you." I was just following Luffy's orders," Zoro sighed. "Why? He's an idiot, he's the captain," Zoro sighed. "Duh." "Captain? You're kidding me," Zoro didn't answer. "Save her," Usopp nudged Luffy. "I wonder where Zoro got the rope." Isn't it just vines?" Luffy asked. "Whatever," Usopp said. "Now you have to go and save her?" How? With a sword." Usopp pushed the wooden sword back into his friend's hands. "Do I cut the rope?" "No, you attack Zoro." "I can't beat Zoro with a sword," Luffy grumbled. "You can't just let Nami hang there," Usopp said. "She'll kill us all." "Fine," Luffy said, climbing the tree up to where Zoro sat. The ledge the tree was rooted to only went out so far, and below was a pond, which opened into a river. More trees lined the banks down there. "Luffy," Zoro greeted him. "What do we do now?" Usopp says we fight, Luffy shrugged. "Luffy, you jerk!" Nami shouted up at him. This is your fault. Eh? Luffy looked over the edge at her, then his gaze turned down to Usopp. Do I have to save her? Luffy, she called. Usopp, Zoro. I don't want to play, get me down from here. I guess we fight, Zoro said. Luffy grinned. He stretched his arm back, then attacked with the sword. It was harder on the branch than it was on solid ground. But Zoro dodged, and backed up further onto the branch, further into the ravine and further towards the center of the waterfall. Go Luffy! Usopp cheered from the sidelines. They sparred back and forth, Luffy nearly falling off the edge at one point, but catching himself by stretching his arms. Just get me back on land, Nami shouted, and you owe me a new book. What happened to her book? Luffy asked, nearly getting hit by Zoro's sword. She dropped it when I was tying her up. Where do you think stupid disappeared to? Oh, Luffy said, accidentally stepping on the knot that held Nami there. Zoro hadn't tied it that well though, and the water that came off the waterfall made the vine slippery, and the knot came a little loose. Nami felt herself drop a couple more inches. Kya, she screamed again. What's wrong now? Luffy asked, mistakenly kicking the knot again. It came loose, and the vine unraveled itself. Quickly Luffy grabbed it. Nami screamed again, as she fell further. She stopped suddenly, the ropes hurting her. She looked up to see Luffy hanging upside down. The only thing holding him was his legs. His tiny hands held the rope, but she could see that it was slipping from his grasp. Hold on, Luffy said, gripping it tighter and trying to pull her up. He wasn't used to hoisting anybody up though, and his legs were starting to shake from the strain. Like I have a choice, Nami said sarcastically, fearfully eyeing the watery depths below. Slowly she rose higher and higher, and she breathed a sigh of relief until Sanji came out of the bushes, surprising Luffy who released his grip. Nami started falling, and Luffy did the same. He stretched his arms out to grab her, they grabbed another branch of a tree. They swung towards the shore, and he let go, letting them fly through the air, and crashing on the hard dirt below. She, Luffy laughed, sitting up. Blood surfaced on his elbow, scratched on something with the impact. You idiot, Nami said, tears welling in her eyes, struggling out of her bindings. We could have both died. But we didn't, Luffy pointed out, helping her get out of the rope. Upon release she hit him over the head, tears still threatening to overflow, but Nami refused to cry. Don't ever do that again. You don't want to be saved? I don't want to be put in danger again, she said, a tear finally slipping down. She don't worry, Luffy told her, rubbing the bump on his head. He wondered where his hat was, but was relieved that when he looked up he saw that Zoro had it. They all watched the two of them from the tree high above the waterfall. I'll save you every time you're in trouble. Promise? She asked, sniffling. Promise, Luffy grinned. Will you be a pirate? I'll be the pirate king, he said, so sure of himself. Then how do I know I can believe you? Nami asked. Because I'll be a good pirate, Luffy said, and good pirates keep their promises. I don't believe you, Nami frowned. Luffy pouted, thinking hard of a way to prove it to her. Besides, I still think you'd make a better marine. The only thing you ever steal is food. Pirates steal everything. You're more of a hero than a pirate. She meant it as a compliment, but Luffy became offended. I can steal, Luffy said. Not without being scolded by your grandpa, Nami countered. I can prove it. Luffy grabbed her shoulders, pressing his lips against Nami's, and ultimately stealing her first kiss. She blushed feverishly, pushing him away. See? Luffy said, also going red though he didn't know why. Above the boys Sanji for different reasons. Idiot, Nami said, hitting him again, her face still bright red, before she turned and stomped into the forest. Luffy was about to chase after her, but she paused, just out of sight of the others. You promise to be a good pirate? She asked quietly. Luffy grinned. Pinky promise. Nami held out her small finger. Luffy stretched his arm out, looping her finger with his. Good, she said. Then maybe, just maybe, I'll still be your navigator. Present day. Luffy. Nami screamed as she was hoisted over the shoulder of a strange man. Luffy's arm stretched out, grabbing her as his other fist came flying at the man. The man went flying into a tree while Nami was reeled into Luffy's arms. She, Luffy grinned. See? I still save you. I still think you're more of hero than a pirate, Nami murmured beside his ear, looping her arms around him so that she could make sure that the log pose was all right. It was, and she breathed a sigh of relief, even as Luffy pulled away. He kissed her, holding it for a long moment, and Nami relaxed into his arms, closing her eyes. Now am I a pirate? Luffy asked, grinning widely. No, Nami gave him a faint smile. Luffy pouted. It was Nami's turn to grin. You have a lot more kisses to steal before I'll consider you a pirate. Luffy's smile appeared again, as he went in for another kiss. Promise? I frowned as I watched her, leaning my head on the bar's counter. I knew she was just gathering information, but still, I couldn't help but feel a little irritated, I realized. Yes, that was the emotion, irritated. I was definitely irritated. It started in at my heart, and made me feel restless. I wanted to go over there and pull her away from him. I should go over and pull her away, but Nami said to stay put. She was only getting information. Only getting information. The meat she'd ordered for me before walking away arrived, but I only glanced at it before turning my gaze back to her. I picked up a piece though, eating it slowly as I watched Nami talk to the other guy. Her hand brushed against his arm gently, her fingers lingering for too long. Robin had called this kind of chatting something before. What was it? Oh, yeah, flirting. I didn't like flirting. There was that one time that Nami had said that girls had been flirting with me, but I don't remember any girls flirting with me the way Nami was flirting with that guy. She laughed loudly. I bet he wasn't even funny, I pouted, turning away. I didn't enjoy feeling this way, it felt unnatural. Cautiously I turned back around and stole a glance at the pirate she was flirting with. He was tall and thin. His red hair and easygoing grin reminded me of a younger Shanks. Only, I liked Shanks a hell of a lot better. I went to grab another piece of meat, but it was all gone. I looked around, wondering who had eaten my meat. Just as I was about to ask for more, I decided against it, leaning my head back down on the counter. It was no fun eating if Nami was all the way over there. Nah, am I whined silently. She glanced over then, just briefly, flashing me a reassuring smile before turning back to the man. I let out a long sigh. Then I let out another sigh. And another one. If you keep sighing like that, the floor's going to cave in, the barmaid told me, placing another plate of meat in front of me. She was about mine and Nami's age, and she had a nice smile. I smiled back. Thank you. That your girlfriend over there? She asked, nodding over at Nami. I nodded, turning my gaze back to Nami as I began eating again. She's pretty, she commented slowly. Maybe a little angrily, maybe I misheard. I agreed. Of course Nami was pretty, Nami was. Well, Nami was Nami. The man that she's talking to is attractive too, she said even slower, leaning on her elbows on the counter space next to me. I wondered if there was something wrong with her. I shrugged, taking a big bite to eat. Nami glanced over again, smiling again, but this time it faltered a bit. I frowned, wondering what was wrong. Aren't you jealous? Jealous? I questioned through a mouthful of meat. Don't you feel a little angry? She asked. I nodded. Kinda like you want to go over there and wrench her away? She pressed on. I nodded again. Like you want to pummel that guy into a pulp? She said, leaning even closer. Would I go that far? I looked at Nami, whose fingers still lingered on the guy's forearm. Finally I turned back to the barmaid and nodded once more. That's jealousy. So why don't you do it? She was leaning even closer now. Because Nami told me to wait here, I said bluntly. She laughed as she pulled away. You're a good boyfriend. Am I? She nodded, resting her head in her chin, gazing at Nami and the man. A lot better than some of the other guys out there. She, I laughed, thanks. We sat in silence for a few moments. The barmaid watched as I finished the meat. You have a bit appetite, she said as she took the plate away. Not really, I said, still hungry. I glanced at Nami and the guy again. Both were starting to look irritated. Were they arguing? Should I go over there? But Nami said she'd come get me when she wanted to go. I sighed. You really like her, the barmaid commented. I smiled. Then why not, Luffy, Nami called. I jumped to my feet, surprising even myself. I turned to her, smiling. Let's go, she said firmly, walking over with the guy and dropping money on the counter. I said happily, following her out of the bar. The guy started talking angrily to the barmaid, and over all the other noise I heard him say something about flirting. The barmaid winked at me as I left, and I realized that Nami had been flirting with her boyfriend. I frowned though, wondering why she had wanted me to pummel him to the ground. "What's wrong?" I asked Nami, noticing the way she stomped her feet while walking. "Luffy," she stopped suddenly, turning to face me. She opened her mouth, then shut it, looking angry and frustrated. She started to turn around again, but thought better of it, I guess, and grabbed me, taking my face in her hands and kissing me. Despite how angry she appeared, the kiss was gentle and soft. She, I laughed as she pulled away. "What was that for?" "So that you would remember that I'm yours," she said. I know," I nodded. I wondered if she was going to kiss me again. "So," she began slowly. "So," I tilted my head, watching as her face changed from its fair skin tone to a bright red. "So," she squared her shoulders confidently, "you have to think only of me." She, I do think only of you," I told her, "but you too." "What?" she asked. "You have to think only of me," I told her. "I do," she said, surprised that I had thought otherwise. I pouted. It didn't seem that way in the bar. I thought for a moment, and as I lowered my lips to hers, I told her, "Well, I'm going to make you think only of me more." If she had said anything to refute me, it faded with the kiss. Nami would definitely think of me and me alone, of breathing in, out, in, out. I frowned as I listened to the breathing of my nakama. Lately, I found that listening to breathing helped me sleep. But why was it different tonight? I sighed as I rolled onto my side, staring off into the dark abyss that was the men's quarters. There were 4 others there in the room, so why did I feel alone? My frown deepened, and I rolled to my other side. Usopp snored loudly. Really loudly. I wondered if it was his big nose. I bet it was his big nose. Another loud snore. It had to be his big nose. I could hear Chopper murmuring. Then his teeth started chattering really loudly. I bent my head over the edge of my bed, and then stretched out a hand to pull his blanket back up to his chin. I didn't get how he could be cold with so much fur. How mysterious. Frankie was doing this weird whirring noise. WHIRRRRRRRRRRR. Like a machine. Which was ridiculous, because Frankie wasn't a machine, he was a cyborg. YT, was a cyborg a machine? I mean, he had all those cool guns, but Frankie wasn't a machine, was he? I decided just to deem him cool rather than human or machine. Usopp snored again. Yes, it was definitely the nose. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho, Brooke snored. I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing. His snores sounded just like his laugh. "Suki-chan, may I see your panties?" I could hardly listen to anyone breathing with all the racket they were causing. I clucked my tongue as I rolled onto my back. I was so bored. My stomach growled. And I was hungry. I pouted, crossing my arms over my chest as I stared at the ceiling. But I felt my facial features soften as I remembered that Nami was on the opposite side. Nami, I liked hearing her breathing. It was calm. Kinda soothing. And I liked her face when she was sleeping. The way her mouth slightly hung open, and her eyelashes rested on her slightly red cheeks. Her hair usually fell in her face. I liked it when the moon shined through the windows, giving her orange hair a silvery tint. I sat up suddenly, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed and jumping down. I had the sudden urge to see her, and let's face it, I wasn't getting any sleep by staying there. I opened and closed the door quietly, then crept up to the women's quarters. Only, when I opened the door, it wasn't Nami's bed that was filled, but Robin's. Zoro sat beside her on top of the covers, and he glanced up from watching her when the door opened. Sanji must have been in the crow's nest tonight, keeping watch. "She's not here," Zoro said quietly. "Were? How should I know?" Zoro muttered. I closed the door, frowning, and then going down to the aquarium. But she wasn't there either. My frown deepened as I went up to the library. I shot past the kitchen, right to the next deck. I even checked underneath her Mikan trees, and refrained from taking one as I headed for the library. And I found her there. I let out a long breath and smiled as I approached. She looked so innocent. So peaceful. I loved her. The blanket she had with her had fallen to the floor, and she was shivering. She had those little bumps all up and down her arms and legs. I picked up the blanket and looked down at her as I placed it back over her. I wondered if I could squeeze in with her on the bench. Frankie should have made it wider. Still, I tried. I had to wiggle my arm underneath her, then I wrapped my other arm around her too, so that I was hugging her. Despite the narrow space, I was comfortable. Nami mumbled something in her sleep, her hand coming to rest on my arm, squeezing it gently. She let out a content breath. I closed my eyes, relaxing there, and listening to the sound of Nami's breathing, all thoughts of food pushed aside. In, out, in, out. I smiled. Perfect. I had only been walking by the railing when I looked out over the sea towards the shore. My heart started beating faster as I leapt over the side of the ship, swimming as fast I could. Zoro, Sanji and Frankie were too far away to save him, so I would do it. I had to do it. I had to save Luffy. Left arm, right arm, left arm, right arm. No matter how fast I swam, I didn't seem to be swimming fast enough. It seemed to take forever to reach him, to dive under and grab him, and even longer to reach the shore. My body grew tired and sore, but I couldn't stop. I dragged Luffy out of the water, pulling him onto the beach, through the sand where the water couldn't touch him. I panted heavily, out of breath, as I fell to my knees beside him, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but barely. Then I started performing CPR like crazy. Somewhere in my mind, I accepted him dying during a battle, whether with Marines or with pirates. Somewhere in my mind, I accepted him dying on some adventure. But for him to die like this, by falling like a hammer to the bottom of the sea? Unacceptable. It may be one of his weaknesses, but for him to die so idly, without trying to accomplish some courageous feat. I squeezed his nose shut and pressed my lips against his. When he responded, I jumped back, startled. She, Luffy stared up at me. We got you. We got you? I clenched my sand-covered fist by my side. It was Usopp's idea. To get a kiss out of you this way. He was panting slightly as he closed his eyes. I was angry. No, I was furious. I took a handful of sand and shoved it in his mouth before storming off towards the tree line. As I entered the forest, he caught up to me. He was still weak from the water, and both of us were drenched. Nami, he said, then stopped, playing around his mouth with his tongue, spitting to get the sand out of there. What's wrong? You really have to ask? I glared at him. It was a joke, Luffy said, and it was harmless. If you didn't, Usopp would have saved me. Harmless? I shook my head, frustrated with him. What if Usopp didn't save you? What if I got a cramp and drowned on the way to you? It was a joke, Luffy repeated, having no other line of defense. And who's laughing? I asked him, watching his face before I shouldered past him, heading back to the shore. I could see Usopp climbing back onto the ship, and I was happy when Robin caught him. Although I'd still beat sense into him later. As I sat down, Luffy came up behind me. I'm sorry, Nami. I didn't say anything, just brought my legs up to my chest, hugging them close, and rested my chin in the little dip created. I'm sorry, Nami. Luffy crouched down beside me. I still didn't say anything, just turned my face away from him. I won't do it ever again. I promise. The waves lapped the sand, turning the pale yellow into a dark tan brown. Nami, Luffy continued to fight for my attention. I closed my eyes, feeling a frustrated tear slide down my cheek. Nami. I was scared, I murmured. I closed my eyes tighter, trying to stop the tears, but they snuck past my defenses and fell. I'm sorry, his fingers brushed against mine. I had really thought. I'm sorry, he repeated. I can't, sorry, he said again. I turned into him, turned my entire body to face him, letting my knees hit the sand as I slammed an angry fist into his chest, then collapsed there, letting the sobs overwhelm me. The tears were more frustrated than anything, maybe tears of relief, because he was okay. I hated that he could even consider doing something so incredibly stupid. I hated how he could even think that it was a good idea, especially when it was Usopp's idea. Cautiously, he wrapped his arms around me, resting his cheek against the top of my head. I forgave him so easily. And I hated myself for that, because I wasn't sure if he'd learned anything. But as he mumbled into my hair, he sounded so earnest, each and every time he whispered. I'm sorry. I hummed as I sat there, at the stern of the ship, my feet hanging over the edge, dangling over the water. I watched the waves that rolled off the ship, frothing and blending into the rest of the sea. The sky was a brilliant and vibrant blue, and the sun shone down, its rays warm as they reached the earth. And I sat there, thinking about the past. About my rough childhood, the horrible years I spent underneath Arlong, and then the past 3 wonderful years. Even if they had been tough and unbearable at times, they became bearable because of Luffy. I thought about Belmere, about Nijiko. All those pirates I had stolen from, and all those times I had escaped. All the money that has passed through my hands, and all the trouble that had come my way. I thought about Luffy, the biggest troublemaker that walked the earth. I thought about how we met, how he'd fallen right into my life. How he had saved me, time after time. About how I always seemed to be the damsel in distress. I thought about the others, too, my nakama. How amazing they all were. I thought about all the tight spots we'd helped each other get out of. All the times we've laughed together, cried together, gotten beaten up and bloody together. All the times we fell, and all the times we stood back up. Unbreakable and resilient. Resilient. That was one way to describe our crew. And that was definitely one was to describe Luffy. Because, I mean, he was a rubber man, after all. Luffy, I sighed, happily, as I thought about him. You seem happy. Speak of the devil. I looked over my shoulder, grinning at Luffy. What are you doing? He asked as he sat down beside me. Just thinking, I responded, looking back out to sea. I leaned into him though, resting my head against his collarbone. About, he prompted. The past. I picked up his hand, holding it out in front of us, watching as our fingers slid into place, locking together. I smiled. The past? He questioned. I said, looking up at him. The good, the bad, all of it. Why? He asked. I don't know, just because, I guess. It's not bad to reminiscent, I told him. I guess, he said slowly. You don't like thinking about the past? I asked. No, I do, he said. Sometimes, but, I pressed on. But I prefer thinking about the future, he said eagerly, grinning widely. Why? I asked. I mean, I liked thinking about the future too, but I wanted to hear his reasoning. Because, he began, thinking for a moment. Because there's so much to look forward to. You can't change your past, but you can choose your path for the future. A pause. And I'm going to be Pirate King. I smiled, stretching my neck out so that I could kiss him on the cheek. I love you. I love you too, he responded automatically, grinning widely. Past or future, didn't matter in that instance. What mattered was the time I spent with Luffy. The present. Let's go there, Luffy pointed. No, Luffy, I sighed. We're short on money this time around, we're only getting the essentials. Essentials, his cheeks puffed up. Food is essential. Not when you ate half an hour ago, I said, glancing around. This was a poor island. The land bare and the trees few. Their main profit seemed to come from fishing, but they were going through a period where the fish just didn't want to bite. And the heat was incredible. I could see the heat waves rising from the dark stone road as we walked, making me glad that I had sandals. But the townspeople were content with their current way of life, though Usopp, Frankie and Chopper had discussed creating something that would attract the fish. Nami, I'm hungry, he complained. So go back to the ship, I murmured. What are we even looking for? He asked, folding his hands behind his head. Chopper asked me to find a place that sells herbs and pick up a few for him while he helps Frankie and Usopp. It won't take long, I told him. Oh, was his only reply. He hummed as we strolled along, until eventually we came across the place we needed. After we bought the herbs, Luffy pulled them from my hand and started running towards the ship. I'll race you back, he called. Oi, Luffy, I began, but he was already so far ahead of me. I rolled my eyes and started after him. He slowed down purposefully, allowing me to catch up before speeding along again. I picked up the pace, twisting and turning to squeeze between and around the people that stood in my way. I realized we weren't heading in the right direction. On the contrary, the ship was in the total opposite direction. In his excitement, Luffy had ran the wrong way. But that didn't matter as I tripped, my hands coming down hard on the hot stone road, skinning me knee and breaking my sandal. I turned so that I was sitting, looking at the scrapes and blood that rose from them. It stung a little bit, and although I could still walk, the road was unbearable for the soles of my feet. Are you okay, Nami? Luffy appeared out of nowhere. He must have seen me fall and came back. Yeah, I muttered, getting to my feet. I supported myself on the one leg, looking at my sandal to see if I could repair it so I could at least get back to the ship. I had other footwear, so I wasn't all that concerned about the destruction of this pair, but still, my shoe. You're bleeding, Luffy frowned. Yeah, I repeated, glancing down. I'll get Chopper to look at it when we get back. Does it hurt? He asked, kneeling down and looking at my scraped knee. It's fine. It only stings a little bye. He poked it and I hissed at him. She, he laughed at my reaction. I frowned at him, grabbing the bag of herbs and beginning to walk across the hot stones back towards the ship. See? I'm fine. Nah, am I, he said, running up beside me. What now? I asked. Here, he picked me up, and I released a shriek of surprise as he swung me onto his back. He wrapped my arms around his neck, took my sandals from me, including the one on my foot, and began walking towards the ship. He looked at me over his shoulder. Isn't this better? I said, squeezing my arms gently around his neck. Though, this was your fault to begin with. He sounded surprised. You're the one that wanted to race, I muttered. Not only that, you were the one that headed in the wrong direction. If we had headed in the right direction, we'd probably have been at the ship by now. Really, I said. Getting a piggyback ride from Luffy was actually kind of fun. It was too bad it'd only last until we got back to the ship. And I probably wouldn't have broken my sandal. And it's my fault the sandal's broken? He asked. I told him, so you have to make it up to me. How? Money? As if you have money to give me, I snorted. Then what? I want you. I thought for a moment. Then I grinned. I want you to give me a piggyback all the way around the town. She, he grinned. I can do that, I agreed. I could also take you around the entire island, Luffy said cheerfully. No, around the town is fine, I reassured him. I could do it in second gear. It'd only take us minutes, he kept going. It was just like Luffy to overdo things, around the town, at a leisurely pace. Luffy, I told him, pinching his cheek. Fine, he grumbled through his stretched mouth. As we neared the edge of the town, he asked me, do you like piggyback rides, Nami? In all honesty, I hadn't ever really had a piggyback ride until Luffy came around. I mean, I'd been on my own for 10 years before that. Belmere may have given me one when I was younger, but it had been so long ago. Instead of telling him that, I took the straw hat off of him, placing it on my head, and said, Luffy. He took off a trot, and I closed my eyes, holding myself close to him. I could feel and hear everything from his heartbeat, to his growling stomach, to his lungs as he drew in air and exhaled. I smiled. I really like piggyback rides. I watched her face. The way her lips moved slightly with every breath she breathed in. And every breath she breathed out, her orange hair cascaded. Over her bare shoulders. Cold shoulders. I wrapped my arm around her. Her eyelashes flutter, and I can't help but wonder if it's me that she's seeing behind those closed lids. Because I know that when I closed my eyes each and every night, she was what I saw. I saw her passionate eyes, that long, orange hair, and her smile. And each and every feature made her that much more beautiful. She was amazingly beautiful, and she had such a big heart. Hidden deep underneath that devious grin of hers. I love her. Then, now, in the future, I loved her. I love her, I will always love her. But sometimes, when I woke up and she was there by my side, I thought it was too good to ever be true. Because she, herself, was perfection at its finest. I feel the rise and the fall of his chest beneath my ear, his steadfast beating heart. It's a strong heart, a caring heart, a heart that doesn't judge and sees the best in everyone because he's strong. And he cares, and he doesn't judge unless someone is clearly in the wrong. His steady gaze is penetrating at best, but when he smiles it all disappears. And all that's left behind is a smile, a grin, and not a care in the world. Behind those lips, sure enough, is laughter, waiting to erupt. And whatever it is that he laughs at probably won't be funny. That's just the way he is. But I'm happy with the way he is. The way he was, and the way he will be. Well, most likely. Just knowing that he'll be there when I open my eyes makes me smile and laugh because it makes me happy. He makes me happy, and I don't have any doubt that when I'm old, gray, and, wrinkly, I'll look at him like I look at him now because I love him. And I know that no matter what hardships may come, this is what happiness really is. I'm hungry, Luffy complained, swinging his feet back and forth as he perched on top of the ship's railing. We had been docked for 2 days, and Luffy had dragged me around exploring yesterday, so today we relieved everyone and decided to stay back. You just ate, I sighed, leaning my head on my arm as it rested beside him on the railing and looked up at him. He had his hat on, and shadows covered the majority of his face. It wasn't enough, he pouted, crossing his arms, and I'm bored. Well, what do you want me to do, Luffy, stand on my head? I rolled my eyes. Could you? He burst into a grin. No, I said, suddenly regretting I had ever brought it up. His face fell. I straightened up and kissed his cheek, and his smile returned again. Hey, Nami, why don't you ever cook? Luffy asked, leaning so far back on the railing that his hands and the crown of his head touched the deck. As he kicked his feet up to do his own handstand, I reached out and dragged a finger across his exposed skin on his stomach, and he collapsed with laughter. He looked up at me from his position on the ground. So what? I asked, stretching as I headed to the tree on the lawn deck. Luffy stretched his arm, grabbing the tree and snapping himself beside me as I sat down on the swing. So why don't you ever cook? He asked, flipping upside down and hanging from a branch. He crossed his arm across his stomach so that I couldn't tickle him again. Isn't cooking the entire reason Sanji's with us? I asked, beginning to swing back and forth, kicking my legs forward and back. Luffy nodded. But I don't know, I'd like to eat something that you make. It's not going to happen, Luffy, I said, shaking my head. I don't cook. You can't cook? Luffy frowned. No, I said, maybe a little too quickly. I composed myself then continued. I didn't say I can't cook, I said I don't cook. Why not? He asked. I just don't, I told him. So you can't, he said. I can, I said, I just don't. I think, he began slowly, grinning, that you can't cook, Nami. I can, I repeated, and I'll prove it to you. I stared at the charcoal in the dish pan that I had stuck in the oven. It had been meat when I'd stuck it in there, and the oven hadn't been smoking before. I didn't get it. I did everything the same way that I had seen Sanji had. I mean, I had wanted it to go a little faster, so I turned up the heat a little, but that shouldn't have made this much of a difference. So you can't cook, Luffy said, poking the meat. I know that. I threw off the oven mitt, tossing it aside. But I tried. Alright? I'm a navigating thief that doesn't know how to cook. I've never had to though. It had been Belmere for the longest time. Then Nijiko and Arlong's chef. When I was out stealing in the East Blue, I had bought all my meals, I never had the need to cook. It's okay, Nami, Luffy grinned. I think it's funny. Funny? I clenched the bottom of my shirt, angry and embarrassed. Yeah, he laughed, like when, running animal trips. That kind of funny, cute. You think it's cute that I can't cook? I wasn't sure whether to be offended or further embarrassed. I decided to be both. Luffy grinned. He took the pan without putting on a glove, not even flinching despite how hot the pan was. He tossed it in the trash, and then took my hand. It was warm from the pan. I'll teach you how to cook, Nami. You can cook? I asked, letting him lead me from the kitchen. Luffy grinned, pulling me along. He swung me up in his arms as he leapt over the side of the ship. Luffy the ship, I began, but at the end of the dock we passed Zoro, who just nodded at us as we passed. I thought you said you were going to teach me how to cook, I said, crossing my arms across my chest as he continued to carry me, cradling me in his arms. I am, he laughed. Just wait. He found a clearing in the forest and skidded to a halt. He put me down, then took a deep breath. I smell meat, he told me, opening his eyes. Go collect some wood. I opened my mouth to say something, but he was already running off, leaving me there all to myself. I did collect the wood. I wasn't sure how much he needed, but I think I gathered enough. Still, he wasn't back though, and I sighed, looking around. Spotting a tree stump, I wandered over and took a seat. And I waited. When he came back, he had some kind of animal in tow. It looked like a lion for the most part, but it had bunny ears and a bunny tail. Look, Nami, I caught a rabbit, he exclaimed, throwing it to the edge of the clearing. I think it's a lion, Luffy, I told him, standing up and wandering over. So you're cooking that? Luffy lifted his chin proudly. He looked at my pile of wood. Nami, that's not enough. Well, you didn't say how much to get, I began, but he was already walking back towards the surrounding forest. Luffy stopped in front of a large tree, and with ease he broke it in half. Then he tore off all the branches, and broke the trunk further. He created a huge fire in the middle of the clearing. Half an hour later we were eating the lion. The meat tore off so easily, and even though there weren't any fancy spices, it tasted delicious. Where do you learn how to cook? I asked. Bandits, Luffy smiled and shrugged, his grin fading ever so slightly, and Ace. Tell me more, I encouraged. As he continued to eat, and eat, and eat, and eat, I leaned on his shoulder, nearly thrown off every time he waved his arms dramatically while he told me stories from his childhood. I learned about Shanks and his grandfather, about Ace, Sabo, and how they became brothers, and the mountain bandits. About the pirates and Sabo's parents. About the wasteland they lived in, and how the pirates had burned it, about Sabo's death. I was happy that he taught me so much about himself, about his past. I had always been too scared to ask him otherwise, wondering if he'd be willing to share, even with me. The same way I'd been too scared to ask anyone to teach me how to cook. But I was sure I still had a lot more learning to do. About cooking, and about Luffy. Luffy, Nami and I were all in the library. I browsed the bookshelves while Nami worked on her maps, and Luffy doodled on the floor, on pieces of paper that Nami had given to him in hopes of keeping him out of her hair. Each would glance at the other from time to time. Sometimes they would meet each other's eyes and share a sweet smile. Other times, they would pause and stare for a while, resting their chins in their hands. As I reached for a book, Luffy set his pen down, leaning on his elbows as he looked at Nami. I drew my hand back, curious, and not wanting to feel the need to leave because I had already found a book to read. Nami, Luffy began. Luffy? She glanced up at him. We're going to get married, right? Nami didn't even bat an eyelash at his question, somehow not coming across as surprised. She just went back to her maps, bowing her head deeply with her cheeks stained red and a shy smile on her face. Her voice came out surprisingly strong, of course. She, okay. Luffy grinned, picking up his pen and going back to his drawing. He started humming, one of the songs that Brooke had been singing the other night. I waited to see what else would happen, but that really seemed like that was it. Still, I took my time grabbing my book and heading for the door. As I closed it behind me, I chuckled. How simple their engagement was. But for them, I think simplicity really was best. I gritted my teeth, clenching my pencil as Luffy poked my cheek. When he pulled away, I went back to drawing the map. With my giving no real reaction, he did it again, and again. Luffy, I snapped at him. What? He asked, going in for another poke. I grabbed his hand. Please, let me work. But I want to do something, he whined, holding onto my arm. So go do something. I shrugged him away. I want to do something with you, he told me. I didn't respond. I just continued to draw. Nami, Luffy complained. Luffy, be patient, please, I sighed, resting my elbows on my desk in the library. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. I need to finish these maps. I've been neglecting them lately and, just be patient, okay? He grumbled, crossing his arms. You'll be fine for one afternoon, I told him. Go find Usopp or something. But Nami, please, Luffy, I looked up at him. Fine, he muttered, uncrossing his arms, but I'm angry. I laughed. Okay. Be angry, I'll find you when I'm done. I'll really be angry, he said, stomping over to the door. I'm sure. I smiled as the door closed behind him. I chuckled as I lifted my pencil and put it back to the paper. It felt nice to work on my maps. I even hummed as I worked. To fill the silence. Each stroke of the pencil just added to the much-needed noise. Luffy came back a while later. At first I ignored him, but soon he was right beside me, hanging over my shoulder. Luffy. Nami, he countered, leave me be for now. Then I'm still angry, he muttered, leaving once more. A couple of minutes later he popped his head in the door once more. Luffy, patience, I sighed, meeting his gaze from across the room. It means to tolerate something for a short duration. Right now, it's in the sense that I need you to wait until I've done these maps before you have my full attention. I'm still angry, he grumbled, closing the door once again. I laughed, sighing before looking back down at my maps. As I worked, I noticed the time, the minutes drawing on longer as he kept away. Did Luffy find something entertaining to do? I looked up, and around the room. It felt weird with him not being there, nagging me. After a while, I looked up again, then back down at my maps. I was nearly done. I set down my pencil and got to my feet, stretching. I could finish up later, after Luffy went to sleep. Heading downstairs, I looked out across the ocean. Dusk was approaching, the sky and the sea slowly turning orange as the sun sank lower and lower. In the kitchen, Sanji was almost done dinner. I found Luffy in the men's quarters, lying on his back and holding his hat high above his face. "Is it broken again?" I asked. He didn't reply, just covered his face with his hat. "Luffy?" I approached him. "I'm still angry," his muffled voice said. I placed my foot on the bed below Luffy's, pulling myself up so I could rest my elbows on his bed. I reached over and pulled his hat away. Despite being angry, he didn't resist. "I'm done the maps," I told him. He didn't say anything. "I can give you my full attention now," I added. Still, nothing. "We all missed you at dinner. It's not even finished yet." Luffy sat up. "Ha!" I laughed at him, grinning now that he was talking to me. He tried to hide his smile, but it failed drastically. "I'm angry." "No you're not," I told him, reaching up and ruffling his hair. He just puffed his cheeks up. "Come here." I gestured for him to lean closer. He did only a little bit. "Come here." He leaned closer, and I went to kiss him on the cheek, but Sanji called for dinner, and Luffy jumped away, leaping over the side of the bed and hurrying to the door. "Luffy, come back here." He looked over his shoulder as he opened the door, teasing as he said, "Patience, Nami."